I've already showed you how to use a router table to make half lap joinery. Now I'm gonna show you how to use a table saw to do it. First thing to do is to get your pieces and mark exactly half of the thickness, because that's what you're gonna set your fence to. Now we can give it a test cut to see if we're close. Looks like we're taking a little bit of the line, so what I'm gonna do is move the fence away just a hair to try to account for that. Right, now it looks like we're where we wanna be. We wanna be just to the side of that line. Setting this up is just gonna be a trial and error process, since it takes a few times to make sure you get it exact. Next, you need to raise up the blade. You'll need to raise up the blade the width of the pieces that you're going to half lap. You can do that by setting one of the pieces next to your blade and then raising the blade. The teeth of the blade may not always be in the right position to be at the very top, which is the height of the cut. So just make sure that your saw is either unplugged or the safety switch is out of it so that you can rotate these teeth to where you find the very top position of the cut. That's where you set your depth to. Now we're ready to make the cut, but to be safe with this type of cut, I'm going to use a backup block. Your backup block doesn't have to be this big, but a nice chunk of wood helps make sure that you can push these through the saw safely. But also take note, when doing cuts like this, you really need to have a throat plate, which is this here, that doesn't have a big gap in it. Make sure to look at your saw, because if you have too big of a gap around the blade in your throat plate, this may not be a safe cut for you. If there's any chance that the wood will now be able to fall into the blade because of the cut that you're making, and if you have a really wide throat plate, this would not be the cut that you want to make. You would need to make this half lap with a different technique on the table saw, because this, no bueno. Now we need to set the saw up so we can cut off this tab and put these together. For that, we're gonna use the miter gauge. This is the miter gauge, and it fits into the channels of the saw. With this, we can use it to come over here and cut off these tabs that are extra. We wanna lower the blade right up to this here. The thicker part is the side we're keeping. The next thing to do is to cut these off here. We want to make sure we cut them right at the width of one of these so they go together perfectly. You could do that by measuring it, or you could lay them on top of each other and mark it. Now, if you set your depth on the first cut right, you should be right where you need to be with that line. Remember, we're cutting off the smaller tab. Now what I do is I get those pieces close. These aren't by any means done, but by cutting off the excess tab, I can now use my fence in conjunction with the miter gauge to get the perfect cut. The reason I didn't do that before was because whatever piece is in between the blade and the fence is called your captive piece, and that would get thrown out behind me at top speed. But now it's safe to use the fence. And just like that, we are right on my lines. Now let's see how we did with the thickness. Put them together, looks pretty flush to me. All in all, good lap joinery.